Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. I have some bad news. Today I'm reviewing a pacer. Last year I reviewed Dapol's N-Scale Class 142 pacer, and I talked quite a lot in that video about the reputation of the pacers for being generally miserable and uncomfortable to ride. And I had a few comments from people, to be fair, saying the pacers were not that bad. You know, I don't mind a pacer too much, but most people said, yes, you're right, the pacers were incredibly nasty to ride. But I have a question for those more used to riding the pacers than I am. Does that apply to all pacers, or is it just the early ones? So up to the Class 142, did the nastiness end there, or were the later pacers a little better? Because the Class 143s, the Class 144s, apparently these were improved. So were they less uncomfortable or not, or were all pacers generally foul? Well, if they were all generally foul, then that's unfortunate, because today I'm reviewing this. The box says it's a Class 143 pacer, but inside is actually a Class 144, which I think is extremely similar, so possibly they are the same models, just numbered differently, or perhaps they just have some small modifications. But either way, this model is produced, as you can see, by EFE Rail, and this release was made a couple of years ago. Now, the full price for these models is insane, and this will explain why I haven't reviewed one before now. Yeah, £249.95. And this is a 2-car set, so that's about £125 per car. Yeah, I wasn't going to pay that, but recently, at quite a few retailers actually, the prices have dropped. So I ended up getting this one from Rails of Sheffield for £149.50, which obviously is about £100 off. Now, there's been a lot of discussion as to the origin of these models. Many people say this is the Realtrack pacer that has been re-released, but looking at the photos, there are obvious differences, sort of physical tooling differences between this and the Realtrack pacer. So it's not just a re-release, at the very least it's been modified. Is that true? Possibly it's just a new design that has maybe unintentionally, I'm sure, been quite similar to the Realtrack design. Yeah, I'm not sure. I sense that there is some controversy here, but I'm not entirely sure what that might be, so I'm not going to comment on it. But either way, it seems like quite an interesting model, and you know what, for 150 quid, I've decided to give it a go. And if you'd like to give it a go as well, or at least just browse what's available, I do have affiliate links down in the description. But I apologise for any miserable memories these pacer models may invoke in you, but we are going to look at this today and see what it's like. Is it worth 250 quid or not? Well, let's see. And I suppose for once the depressing EFE Rail packaging design actually matches the subject within, doesn't it? Assuming of course the Class 143 and 144s were as miserable as the 142s were, although I've not heard anything to the contrary yet, so if you disagree with that statement, comment down below and let me know. I have actually ridden a pacer before, and yes, it was nasty, but it was many years ago and I don't know which class of pacer it was. So anyway, answers on a postcard on that one. Anyway, let me show you the end of the box. So what I've gone for is the EFR EH3031, and the text for some reason is encroaching on the barcode there, but you can read that this is a Class 144 2-car DMU number 14403 in the BRWY livery, which is a West Yorkshire livery. Anyway, not really much to see on the box. It doesn't say, for instance, that this was manufactured by Kerno, which is usually what it does if it's a Kerno product, so no answers there. Let's open this up then and see what we get. Ah, instructions. Okay, so this is not a model that I know very much about, so let's jump in and see if we can learn anything about it here. So welcome, accessories, highly detailed and ready to run straight from the box, but we've got extra details. So you've got BSI couplers, which you can fit, and that's all that's mentioned. Okay, running in, that's fine, yes, I will run it in. For lubrication, there are these covers that need to be opened, and by the looks of it, that exposes the gears, allowing you to lubricate them. coily low quality images there, so I can't really see what the mechanism's like. Right, coupling and uncoupling. So interestingly, the two units are connected electrically, presumably for lighting. So yeah, this allows you to control all of the cars with one decoder without the need for multiple decoders, so that's fine. And to couple them, apparently you just put them down on a straight piece of track and make sure they line up, push them together. Right, lighting and feature switches. Alright, so this is quite a complex model then. So we've got some switches on the base for direction/head code lights, fair enough. DCC decoder and sound fitting. So apparently the DCC socket, which is a next 18 pin socket, is located below a panel. These images show it quite nicely, so you don't really have to disassemble the thing to get access to the DCC socket. So that should make chipping this quite simple. Anyway, here we have the exploded diagram. So yeah, all sorts of different assemblies on here. Looks like we've got the chassis there, possibly. And then we've got the bodies over here, which do seem nice and complex. More complex, certainly, than the old Hornby Pacer that I've got. And because of the extra size, certainly a lot more complex than the Dapol N-scale ones, as good as those were. And then here's the 143, 144 power car. Ah, yeah, so this is going to be the powered chassis, I assume. And then the other body there. All right, well, let's see the model itself then. And as per usual for me, I chose what I thought was the most interesting livery. So I'll be interested to see if you agree with that. There it is. Individually packaged, fair enough. Yeah, it's quite the livery, this. Metro train livery, which is a kind of tan, no, it's a sort of faded red livery with a cream band and yellow ends. So yeah, interesting livery. Right, let's pull the top car out, just at random. Yeah, there's a fair bit of weight to it, I would say. I mean, this is not going to be hauling a 10-car train at any point, so I don't really see that they have to be ever so heavy, but it will certainly contribute to the quality feel if they are. All right, so this is what the instructions must have been referring to. You've got these dummy couplers if you want to use those, although I don't suppose I will do, but nice to have the option. Right, first look then. I'm not really sure if this is the powered vehicle or not. Possibly both of them are. Don't think so though. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. But like I say, I currently do not know. Oh yes. Oh, that's a quality finish. Can you see that? Yep, metal roof shining as though it really is metal. That's great. Don't suppose the model's roof is metal. No, but in real life it would be. So yeah, that's nice, and obviously if you wanted to weather that up and make it look less brand new, that is something you could do. Anyway, gently lifting. Ooh, okay. And here it is. I said ooh, okay, because I can feel the glazing pieces moving under my fingers, so I'm going to try not to touch those going forward. Anyway, here it is. Here's the first look at the livery, I suppose. Yeah, which is unusual. I do quite like this. I'm not that far from West Yorkshire, so it's not a stupid decision by any means. But yeah, this looks like a fairly decent model, I would say. Quite a lot of details to it. The decoration does look good. And obviously the extent of the level of detail we shall see in a little while. Yeah, this is, sure enough, the powered car. So both of the axles here are locked. Those are the switches for the lighting. And yeah, the connector between the two units is kinematic, so they should be nice and close. Right, let's have a look at the other one then. Let's confirm whether or not they are both driven. And, oh, do you know what? This feels quite weighty. I'll be very surprised if this is driven as well. But maybe they just have the same chassis, just this one won't have the motor fitted, and that's why it still feels quite heavy. I don't know, let's see. Maybe they will all be driven. I mean, I'll be impressed. Surely not, though. That would be so silly. Right. Anyway, there we go. Same sort of thing from above. And here it is. Yep, looking pretty good. And yep, sure enough, as much as this feels as heavy as the other unit, this one is undriven. And very interestingly, this whole assembly here is slightly sprung, which I didn't notice on the other unit. I thought for a moment it was just loose, but no, it does seem to be intentional, and so is the other one. All right, so we've got suspension. So it looks as though some thought has been given to the comfort of the 00 scale passengers, as much as it was never given to the real life passengers. I suppose better late than never to consider comfort. Anyway, there they are, the two cars of the 144 Pacer. We'll have a much closer look at these models in just a second, but for now, let's have some background on the dreaded pacers in real life. The Class 144 pacer was introduced a little while after the other pacers in 1986 as an improvement to the existing Class 141 and 142 pacers, despite sharing many of the same features. 23 units were built in total over 1 year, and they came about as British Rail's alternative to spending lots of money on refurbishing their existing aging fleet of DMUs. Now, if they built new DMUs instead of fixing what they had already, that tells you one thing about the pacers: they must have been extremely cheap. And they were. The Class 140 was essentially a Leyland rail bus that ran on train wheels instead of tyres. This allowed the units to be built cost-effectively, but they were primitive, uncomfortable, and if not ugly, then certainly extremely bus-like. As a result, they tried to improve on the pacer design with the following batches, which were classified the 142 and the 143, which brought about an improved ride quality. They departed from the road bus design with wider bodies allowing more room for passengers, and railway grade wiring and hardware was used internally as opposed to bus grade, which was less reliable. The Class 144 we see here was very similar to the Class 143 described, although these were known to haul additional vehicles from time to time, making the 144, I believe, the only class of pacer to be seen with 3 units instead of the more usual 2. Though the Class 144 has now been withdrawn from service, many have been purchased by Heritage Railways and preserved, with around 14 units still around today. So here it is, up close and personal for you, the EFE Rail Class 144. And yeah, I think this is alright. Generally, it's a well put together and well detailed model. The exterior is particularly good. There's a lot of detail out here, which we'll see. The interior is a different story. Yeah, that's much less impressive, as we're going to see, and frankly, I'd be quite fuming about that if I'd paid £250 for this. But of course, I paid £100 less than that. I paid £150, which I think is very much the right price for this. It's not a bargain as it first appeared, but now that they've been reduced, I would say that that price is sensible. Let's talk about the quality then. Now, generally speaking, this is a well-built model, but there's a couple of minor issues. Firstly, quite a few scuffs in the decoration, and weirdly, both units have a lot of sort of scratching right here on the bodywork in the same place. Now, I've put it back into the packaging. There's no packaging touching the units there, so it's not that. I wonder if perhaps at the factory they use some sort of tool to clamp the model here while it's painted or something. I don't know, but yeah, that's not great. There also seems to be a bit of an issue with the glazing pieces around the door. A lot of these, again on both units, do seem to be quite badly scratched, which is not a great look for such an expensive and supposedly high quality model. Otherwise though, these are very, very well done. So let's start by taking a look at the decoration, and yeah, I still maintain I really like this livery. Don't have anything else in the collection painted quite like this, at least I don't think so. So for me, this is very welcome indeed. Anyway, I love the shade of red. I'm going to call it red. Maybe it's more of a tan. I'm not too sure. But it's quite a complex livery. You've got the orange band across here, followed by the much thicker cream band, which contains the Metro Train logo here, very nicely printed, and also the British Railways arrows. There's a lot of other details picked out on here though. I mean, we've got the little buttons beside the doors. These have been picked out. Little sign there that is incredibly tiny, but you know, possibly that's legible. We'll see what the close-up lens can do. Obviously, we've got the running number towards the back here. We've got the steps below the doors. These have been picked out in a different colour. All sorts of little parts that have been picked out, which together I think make the decoration quite complex. Look, the window frames, these are painted as well. Plus there's some print work on the glazing. Looks like no smoking signs to me. And these are applied to each panel, so quite a bit of complexity here as well. Not to mention the ends, of course, which are painted yellow, and here the paintwork is quite complex as well. The window frames here have the classic Pacer black around them, very thick, which I think creates that Pacer iconic look. We've got the destination board here, that's nicely applied. Yeah, loads and loads of different painted details. The finish is absolutely fine as well, very good quality, particularly up on the roof where there's a real sort of shine to this. Okay, detail-wise, we'll start at the bottom. Now, from the side, the underframe looks excellent. There's quite a few separately fitted parts, pipework and such, and the axle boxes look pretty good from the outside as well. There's even a couple of separately fitted parts. Underneath, though, there is less detail. Now, this is fine. Obviously, you're not going to see this for the most part when it's running, but this does mean that this is a step below, I suppose, some of those other models that are realistic all the way around. In terms of couplings, I wasn't necessarily expecting this, but we do have tension lock couplings pre-fitted, which droop down quite conspicuously. And I wonder why they did this. You know, there's not that many people, surely, that are going to want to couple these pacers up to anything, and yet they've decided to give us these tension locks. Now, I would say for that reason, these are a little pointless. Also, as you can see, the tension lock coupling is heavily stepped, which again completely defeats the object of including NEM couplings, because obviously it's fine if you want to use the tension lock, but if you wanted to use a KD coupling or a European hook and loop, well, it'd be at the wrong height. So, yeah, why they did that, I don't know, but I'm very glad that they provided a more realistic coupling, which you could fit here instead. Above here we have what I hope are working lights. I mean, they're going to be, aren't they? The instructions talked about working lights, and they do look good and realistic from the outside. And then on the front windows we've got separately fitted, not just moulded and then painted, wipers, which look great. One particularly impressive area here are the doors. So we've got handrails on the outside of the doors, that's not that unusual, but we've got the very bus-like orange handrails fitted to the inside of the doors, and these are not just a decorated effect, they are real physical separately fitted wire, well, I assume wire, handrails, which is really, really cool, and it looks marvellously realistic. The rest of these sides of the model are much simpler when it comes to separately fitted parts, but the riveting and such all looks excellent. Here's a look around the back then, where we've got the separately fitted exhaust, almost said chimney, I think I do too many Steam reviews, and then the sort of corridor connector here, which interestingly, like the axles on the non-driven unit, is slightly sprung. So only in that direction, it doesn't spring at the bottom, it just kind of springs in at the top, more or less. So I don't know, if you go up an incline or something, would these push together and interfere with each other if they weren't sprung? I don't know, but yeah, that's interesting. And then up on the roof, lots and lots of riveting. It's very detailed where that's concerned. And there's a few separately fitted parts up here as well, which are nicely applied. So, like I say, from the outside, the models are excellent, very complexly decorated, and there's a lot of separately fitted detail and other impressive details as well. For 250 quid though, I would expect the model to be realistic inside as well as outside, and for the most part, it really isn't. So the main passenger compartment is very basic. We have got the seats, which have the little handrails moulded onto the tops of them, so that looks good. But the floor level inside is noticeably unrealistic, so if you were to fit passengers in here, which many like to do, you would have to chop their legs off, which seems a bit discriminatory, doesn't it? I mean, what about passengers that do have legs? I feel a bit left out there. Fortunately though, the floor level where the doors are is more realistic. You can see, if we look inside, there's a step up into the passenger compartment, and I assume that space is used to accommodate the mechanism. The cab floor level is more realistic, I suppose, and as you can see, we do have the seats in here, and they look good, and there's also a piece of glazing between the driver's compartment and the passenger compartment, which is cool. But the cabs are very, very basic. We've got some sort of instrument panel moulded here, but none of the details have been picked out or decorated. Yeah, for 250 quid, that is a real pity. I can just about live with that for 150, but would it really have hurt to produce a bit of a better interior here? And then at the other end of the driving car, we've got what I think is the bog, because it's got the blanked out window here and there's a door you can see on the inside, and that's only on the driving car. The trailing unit doesn't have any toilet there, it's just got a couple of extra seats. I can see though that there is interior lighting in this car, so that's nice to see. Again though, when models have interior lights, you would hope to see a bit more interior detail than this, otherwise you're just drawing attention to the fact that there's really not that much detail inside. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it for the level of detail. Anything else? Well, there's the separately fitted lamp brackets on the end, which are not very nicely moulded or painted, so perhaps I shouldn't have bothered mentioning them, but I should do, I suppose. But yeah, really, I think that pretty much sums it up. So with that, I've not coupled these two cars together yet. I'm going to wait until they're on the track for that. So yeah, let's have a look at the mechanism. Let's see how this runs. So there it is, down onto the track, the Pacer 1442 car set, and I've already filmed the initial performance test and I'll show you how all that went in just a second. After that, I took these apart to look at the mechanism, and that's what I'm going to talk you through now. First, let's talk about the weight, because I don't think I did that already. So the two are pretty close in weight, I would say, considering one of them is driven and the other one isn't. So the driving trailer weighs in at 192 grams, which is not a great deal. That's about the same as a Bachmann Ginty, but I guess it's fine given that these really don't have to haul very much. The other one is just 20 grams or so behind it at 174 grams. That means together they come in at 366 grams, which is just a touch more than a Bachmann Class 20. Let's talk about the motors then. Now, I think these are hidden in plain sight, and I pluralised there on purpose because, yes, I think there are two motors, one driving each of the axles on the powered car. Now, that's a very interesting and also unusual decision. First of all, I wonder why there are two motors here, given that the floor level of the passenger compartment has been compromised anyway. So why they didn't just use a larger centrally mounted motor and drive the axles using a shaft of some sort, I just don't know. It's not that they're particularly power hungry though. I did measure the current draw. It's less than 200 milliamps even under load, which means each motor's only using about 1 watt. Not very powerful though, and it does struggle to move itself. So yeah, some sort of larger, more beefier, or just better quality motors I think would have been better. Anyway, the base keeper plates are just clipped on. Usually I'm not a fan of clips, but because these are held on with just 2 clips, one at each end, it was very, very easy to get these off. And as you can see, each axle runs in proper separate bearings, and this goes for the non-driven car as well. And these bearings pick up power as well. You can see there's some brass shoes here which touch those bearings and carry power into the loco. That does mean, of course, though, that there has to be a plastic insulator between each metal wheel on an axle, and into that is built the main driving gear, as you can see. So here are the switches on the bottom of the model. These switches are only on the power car, there's nothing like this on the other. And apparently the next 18-pin decoder socket is below here. So if I remove the screw, you can see that this plate lifts off to reveal the Next 18 blanking plug. Now this blanking plug is massive. It seemed to me that it wasn't a Next 18 because of its size, but it was. So if you want to pop that out and put in a decoder, you can do. Apparently there is a pre-fitted speaker in here as well, which means it is fully sound ready. Now, because we've already seen the motors and the bearings and the DCC socket, there's actually no reason to remove the bodies, but I decided I would do just to take a curious look inside. So with some glue spreaders, I managed to get the bodies off without too much of a fight. And here is the chassis. Nothing on the outside of the models is made of metal, so the bodies and the visible chassis is all plastic, but the chassis block inside is made of metal, which is good. And you can see the light bars here for the interior lights are built into the chassis. You've got the channels here for the head and tail lights, there's LEDs that run those, and then up above the cab there is an LED here which powers the destination boards, so we've got a full lighting package here. And here's a fun little detail, with the body off I could see what was inside the toilet, and to my amazement there was some detail here. There is a bidet. I'm not going to call that a toilet, that's definitely not a toilet, that's for, well, you know what a bidet's for. If you don't, I wouldn't recommend Googling it. And then what is quite clearly a sink. Why they've done that, I just don't know. Surely there can't have been a variant of the Pacer that had a transparent window into the bathroom. That would be a massive invasion of privacy, surely, while you're, well, using the bidet. But I take great satisfaction in knowing there is a semi-realistic bog inside my Pacer model. That's excellent. And then the back-to-back gauging was very reliable, actually. Every axle at 14.3 except for the last one, which was 14.2. So just comfortably below the standard, nothing too egregious there. So I think that's the mechanism. It's reasonably accessible, serviceability shouldn't be a problem, and chipping this is going to be very easy as well. Just the motors I'm not a big fan of, but I should say because of the low current draw, you aren't going to have any issues with overloading decoders. Yeah, less than 200 milliamps, that is comparable to a loco with just a single motor. So yeah, as long as you're not using a sort of knockoff cheap decoder, I don't think you're going to be overloading it. Anyway, that's enough about that. Let's move back in time now and let me show you how this thing ran. Right, so currently I've not seen these two coupled together yet, so that's going to be my first job, see how well this connector works. So, take the two units, apparently, and just push them together. That doesn't seem to be working. Oh yeah, no, that's not even close, is it? One of them's drooping down. This one, or is this one poking up? Let's try that again. Nah, no, that's not good. Right, so it's not fit for purpose, or at least not the purpose described in the instructions. You can't couple them together on the track, or at least I can't. Right, I think I've done it. Yeah, that was not easily done at all. How that would ever have worked on the track, I don't know. I had to do that in the hands. Anyway, I think we're coupled, and that is quite the impressive coupling there. Can you see how close they are? Let's go in close. Yeah, so now I see why the corridor connectors had to be sprung like that. I think they are more or less touching. Very, very realistic though. And now then, the real moment of truth. What is the performance like? So, forwards direction. First try, obviously, at this point, these have not been run in, so I will do that before I judge the performance. But straight out of the box, here is my experience. Let's start. I can hear a buzzing. Up. I'm now up to 30. That's 40. That's 50. The lights have come on. Oh. Okay. Well. Doesn't seem to start very easily, at least not initially. I think it's going a bit better now though. It is now starting at 50. What I did there was ramp it up from 50 and then it started. That's 60, for example. So yeah, very interesting. It's getting better though. It sounds a bit less grumpy, and yeah, it seems to be speeding up. That is now 50. So let me run by at half power just to log that for now. Right, that's 50. So that's sensible, I would have said. Full speed. Oh yeah, the lights get very bright. So let's talk about the lighting then. So in the forwards direction, the destination boards light up very, very brightly in quite noticeably the wrong colour. Yeah, it's too much of a cool temperature there. They needed warm white LEDs to simulate a tungsten bulb or some sort of, well, any bulb really from those days. The headlights though, weirdly, they seem to be a little bit warmer. That's alright. And then the red tail lights, yeah, they look fine to me as well. Just red's red, I suppose, isn't it? And then the interior lighting is pretty decent as well. Yeah, it's good and bright, illuminates the lack of detail just perfectly. But overall, I would say the lighting package is brilliant. Very, very impressive. Right, is there any torque there? I would guess no, based on its first performance, but who knows, now it's warmed up a bit. I would say put my fingers on the buffers, but I can't do that for obvious reasons. So 50%. Yeah, it is actually turning its wheels. So yeah, we've got some torque there, which is good. Right, I've moved you in a bit closer so we can try the crawl. Again, I will do all this later on once it's had a chance to warm up, but straight out of the box, here we go. Hopefully this will be a bit more successful than the first test. Up. Yeah, doesn't like starting slowly, although I mean it's starting to. No, okay. So that's something that really needs to be improved, I would say. For all that money, you'd expect to be able to start and stop with this smoothly, even on analog, as you can with most of the models I test. But anyway, I think that's what it needs then, a thorough warming up. So I'll set this to 50 and I'll run this in around the layout. So here we go, half power. All right, that's the fourth radius. On to the second. Oh dear. Yeah, it doesn't like that very much, does it? Blimey. Now, I would say that's probably to do with the large wheelbase and the flanges cutting into the rails. But of course I've got Hornby pacers, which don't do that. They are powerful enough not to get stuck like this. But yeah, this one does not like second radius. I guess I'll give it a push. Go on. Oh, curving in the other direction was okay. Right, will that improve as it runs in? So not dreadfully impressed by the performance. It does seem quite laboured. The torque test that I did with my finger didn't seem so bad, but yeah, that second radius really did floor it, didn't it? So, I don't know, third radius looks okay. I would say on first impressions, if you've got a lot of second radius, I would give it a second thought before you purchase one of these. Unless things improve, that could be completely unfair, and once this is warmed up, it could be fine. But for the moment, that performance around the second radius is pretty dramatic. But anyway, I'll let this warm up. Hopefully, things will improve, so I'll see you in just a second. Okay, that is running in complete, and as you would have seen from some of those clips I showed just a second ago, after a few laps this was able to get around those second radius curves without stopping. Now, it was certainly a struggle, and it didn't like the second radius curves, and still doesn't, but it's not stopping on them anymore, which is an improvement. So if you get that issue, running in is a good way to try and fix it. Anyway, let's take a look now and see if the speed's changed at all. So here comes half power. Yeah, it's certainly quieter now that it's run in, quieter, smoother, and on the straights at least, the performance is excellent. So there you go. Full speed, what does that look like? I think these could do about 70, 80 odd miles an hour, something like that. Yeah, it looks very right, so not an issue with the gearing. Let's have another look at the torque. Is that even better? Because the thing is, the torque didn't seem bad on the straight track when I did it here, but then on those curves it just dies. 50. Yeah, you see it's fine. So I think it's just that there's no pivoting in the axles. It's got to be that, hasn't it? And then when it hits a tighter curve, the flanges dig into the rails and that causes the friction. Because my Hornby Pacers, and I'm going to run those for you, well, for you, I've only got one, in just a second, it does not do that. It doesn't. And yet it's a very similar design, two motors, albeit one in each unit rather than both in the same unit. But then the rear undriven axle is able to pivot on that design of model, and it does not struggle over second radius. Generally, it's a much better performer, which is shocking because the Hornby Pacer, as we're going to see, is terrible looking compared with this, but mechanically, it works better. Anyway, what's the crawl like on this now? Let's see. Turning up slowly. Please be better. It's making a lot of noise. Oh, yeah, you see, it's not desperately quick, that, so it's able to run reasonably slowly, but creeping about in stations with maximum control, yeah, it's not something this appears to offer. Other way. Turning up. Oh, dearie me. Can I slow down? Let me do that forwards again and try and slow down into a crawl. Yeah, it just starts juddering and stopping. So yeah, that's not great. Now, don't get me wrong. You might say, I don't want my Pacer to be able to crawl, and well, that's a good job because it can't. But I just think that for so much money, this ought to be a great performer, and instead it's just a little bit naff, especially when you consider the way it runs around the curves. I did test the couplings though. In fact, I could do this again on camera. They do appear to be drooping down quite dramatically, and don't embarrass me when I say this, but they do seem to be okay. Yep, that's right. So even though they are drooping a touch, they seem to couple all right. So yeah, if you wanted to couple anything up to this, I don't think many would. Maybe you'd add an extra trailer if you really wanted to, but that'd be all. You can do, yeah, that would be fine. So with that, let's give this another run. Let me show you how it is now after it's run in. So here we go. So talk of the devil on the inside line. Which way am I going? Oh, it must be wide up backwards. We have the Hornby Pacer, which you can hear coming a mile off. And yeah, it's not a healthy sounding machine at all, this, but it does perform better. In fact, does it crawl better? Let's see. Let's ease this up very gradually. Yep, it certainly does. And it's not incredible, but it's certainly slower. Not exactly smooth, but then it's ancient and horrible compared with the EFE one. Yeah, I would have expected better from the new model. Anyway, I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to run on the inside line, so I've gone with what I suppose is most similar to the Pacers, and this is the Super Sprinter, which is obviously a much larger DMU with a bit more spent on it, although I think they were still on a budget, weren't they? Anyway, let's catch up with the 144. Right, here we go, taking the curves again now that it's running. As you can see, slowing down dramatically still, but not stopping, which is obviously good, but I'm not exactly overcome with emotion, because being able to stagger around a layout without stopping isn't exactly that impressive, is it? It's the bare minimum, but the fact that it can do it is certainly good. Away from the second radius, even on third radius and broader, it's a much different story. It's nice and smooth, quite reliable. If it does slow down, it's not very noticeable. On broader curves, it is absolutely fine. So again, I think what I said earlier is pretty much about right. If you've got tighter second radius curves, you may run into issues. If you've got anything like realistic curves, then this is not going to be a problem. So yeah, it's a lovely looking set, this. I mean, the detail is good enough, I would say. Probably not for 250 quid, but for what I paid, I don't have any major complaints. And certainly the presentation of these, whether it's the level of detail or the decoration, is miles ahead of the old sets Hornby used to produce. So yeah, I think they seem to be the best option for a Pacer on the market at the moment. Not that the Hornby ones are available really, but you can pick those up second hand. So those are your options really, second hand from Hornby or a new one from EFE. On the whole, I would say the EFE one is better, but there are exceptions to that. For instance, if all your curves are second radius, then perhaps I'd save your money and get an old Hornby one. But yeah, overall, not too bad at all. Certainly the best looking Pacer model I think I've reviewed. And now then, some ratings for the EFE Rail Class 144. And yeah, overall I think it's a good model, but it's also a mixed bag, and there's some things about it that do let it down. The level of detail though on the whole is pretty good, if not amazing, so I've given it 4-star. Lots of details to praise with this one. There's a lot of detail on the outside of the model, whether that's the separately fitted pipework or the incredible detail around the doors, or the lighting package, which is also really good. The decoration is top-notch as well, far more complex and refined than on the old Hornby versions, which I particularly noticed. On the downside though, the interior really isn't very good, which is why I've knocked it down a star. Very little detail inside the cab, and the passenger compartment is very basic as well, with an unrealistic floor level and no real detail to the seating. So yeah, 4-star, on the whole pretty good. If you like your detailed interiors though, this is less impressive. Performance is the biggest letdown on this model. Yeah, it's just not great. The crawl is almost non-existent. Perhaps on digital you'd be able to get this to crawl better. Mine though just kind of lurches into life at a not particularly slow speed. Also, there isn't great torque in the mechanism. Second radius curves really floors this thing, which they shouldn't. My old Hornby version runs way better than this, and it's got the same kind of wheelbase, just a different design. It is reliable though, it doesn't cut out, well at least mine hasn't done, and it is able to now get itself around the layout without a push now that it's run in. So running in did bring about some improvement to this, that's for sure. The pulling power then, thanks to the weight of the units, is absolutely fine. 20 coaches or 0.3 newtons. Now obviously, does the thing have the torque to do that around curves and up inclines? No, it doesn't. But I think given that most people won't want to couple anything at all to this, I do think 0.3 newtons is far more than adequate, as much as these units aren't dreadfully heavy, but you know, what are you gonna say? Mechanism then, I've given 4-star. Now I don't like the clips holding the base keepers on. I would normally say that hinders serviceability, but because the bases are so small and there's only 2 clips per base, they're actually very easy to remove, so I don't have much of an issue with those. Otherwise the mechanism's great. It's got all-wheel pickup, it's got proper bearings on the driving axles, and it's very easy to access all of this, and the DCC socket as well, for which you don't have to remove the body. That's really good. I've not given this 5-star because the motors don't seem to be the best. Yeah, better motors I think, or just one motor that is better than both of these put together would have been an improvement, I think. Otherwise it's great. There's even a pre-fitted speaker in here for easy sound fitting. quality then, again, is a bit of a letdown on this. I mean, generally the build's pretty good. A lot of the separate parts are nicely applied, etc. But the decoration's a little bit spotty. We've got sort of scratches in the paintwork, and sometimes the sharpness of the different colours isn't great. I think the close-up showed that quite clearly. Also, we've got the glazing, which isn't the highest quality, lots of scratches in that, quite hard to see through at times. Yeah, not really what you'd expect for such an expensive model. I suppose it's a little bit plasticky as well, and you can also feel the glazing pieces moving under your fingers because they're glued on at the bottom, so when your fingers touch the top, they kind of flex inwards. So yeah, not the greatest quality model in the world, but with careful handling and a bit of distance, it is acceptable, I would say. Value for money then, well, this is tricky because £249.95 as the full RRP for this seems extremely excessive. That's £125 per unit, and remember, one of them is essentially just a coach with lighting. That's a lot of money for that. I paid £149.50, which I think is a lot more like it. It's not a bargain, as it seems, but I think given what you get, given the amount of detail and features here, it's at least a fair price. Say that quite a bit, but no, I think now that it's been reduced, at last you can pick one of these up for a fair price. So I've split the difference, I've given it 3-star. Overall then, that is 6.77 out of 10, or a grade of E. Yeah, fairly disappointing grade, mainly because of the performance and the quality. Specifically, they don't meet the standard that you'd expect given the full price of this. So that is a grade of E, and into the logbook it goes towards the bottom, unfortunately, 6th place, above the Bullied Leader and below the Hornby A3 in black. But could I recommend one of these? Well, at the reduced prices, yes, but I wouldn't recommend paying a penny more. Approaching £200, £250, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Not worth the money in my opinion, but for what it is at the lower prices, yeah, why not? If you like the Pacers, I don't think many do, if you want to model the Pacers then this is a good way to do it. Alright then folks, well that will do it for my review of the EFE Rail Class 144 Pacer. A model that I've often wondered about, so finally I've been able to try one out and I did enjoy it. Yeah, it's an interesting pack for sure. Anyway, if you are interested in these, do check out the affiliate link in the description. There's actually quite a few of the different liveries available at this new and lower price, which is pretty good. So yeah, even if you're not interested in this one, it's worth checking them out just in case there is a livery that you do like. But anyway, I think we'll leave that there. Do comment down below, let me know what you thought about this. But for now, thank you so much once again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.